Hey guys, what's going on? So, welcome to my competitive guide. My name's Lee. You may also know me as Osiris, as I go by online sometimes. A UK Pokemon battler, VGC player. I've played for an absolute marathon of years. Some of my finishes have been finished twice in third place at the UK Nationals when it used to be Nationals before we had the International Championships. I finished 7th place at the 2014 World Championships and have a lot of experience. So, playing past formats as well. And we started the channel up last year, but we haven't really delved into doing competitive guides. So, I thought this year it's a good time to start, and I'm going to do absolutely everything I can, cover everything I can. So, if you like this sort of content, do subscribe to the channel so you make sure you don't miss anything, because I am literally going to be going through as many of the top tier Pokemon and some maybe not so top tier Pokemon as we get into the new format 2018. But where better to start than the ground god, Landorus-Therian form. So in past formats, wherever Landorus has been involved, it's always been one of your premier ground type choices, and that's for a number of reasons. It has great typing, ground and flying, so it is immune to other ground type attacks. For starters, it has an amazing ability Intimidate, which we all know from, if you've played previous VGC formats, how important Intimidate is. So if you don't know, Intimidate is an ability. When this Pokemon comes out onto the field, it will lower the opposing Pokemon's attack stats by 1 stage, which is huge. So when you train a Pokemon, and you do calculations on certain attacks to pick up knockouts on other Pokemon, things like that, you calc them and you don't really look at your attack stat if it's -1. So initially, straight away, it throws all of these big calculations that these physical type attackers have out the window. So it's very good for that, and you can cycle that ability as much as you want. So take it out, bring it back in. Every time you bring it in, it will drop the attack of the opposing Pokemon again and again and again. So that's a very good ability, one of the best abilities I think we've got access to in the whole VGC game, Pokemon game I should say, not VGC. But yeah, very strong ability, good typing, and it's a legendary Pokemon, so its base stats are ridiculously good. If any of you played VGC 18, you'll know Garchomp was a very, very good Pokemon. Very, one of the premier Pokemon that didn't go away all season, because ground is such a good attacking type. The Earthquake's a double type attack, so it can do loads of damage. It's got access to Tectonic Rage and things like that. So we're looking down. Landorus-Therian forms attack stat 145, which is just insane. So it's a very strong Pokemon. Its defenses aren't too bad either, especially when you consider the defense stat is bolstered almost by the Intimidate ability that it has as well. Special defense isn't too bad, 89 HP, 80 special defense, it's not bad, and a decent speed tier as well on 91. So all in all, very strong Pokemon. And like I say, in past formats, whenever it's been available, it's always been a very, very, very prominent Pokemon throughout the season. And the support it provides, and offense it provides your team, are just incredible. So going on to the competitive guide, these are just initial, because I haven't played too many games in the format just yet. So these are just guidelines to go along, and just briefly my thoughts on what this Pokemon will bring. And a lot of older players will be aware of Landorus-Therian form. So this is kind of just to cover a few things, possibilities that might be useful within this format. So even the older players might be able to pick up on some aspects through here. But for the newer players coming into the format, they've only maybe played VGC 17 or even not played VGC at all, I'm just going to go over what my thoughts are on Landorus, some sample sets, and what to expect from this Pokemon. So we can come over, let's go over to our showdown. So I've got my showdown up in here, and in first place we have what I think will be probably the most used Landorus still this season, despite other options available through Z crystals and other item choices. I still think the choice scarf is probably going to be the most used Landorus-Therian set, because And one big reason is because it's got that fast U-turn. And one thing that Landorus is very good at is getting the Intimidate off, U-turning out of there. For those of you that don't know, U-turn is a move that when you target into a Pokemon, you also target into them, do some damage, and automatically get a switch out to a Pokemon in the back. So in theory what you can do is, even if you're up against something like an Alolan Ninetales, you can U-turn into that Pokemon, hit it before it can get an attack off because you've got the Choice Scarf. It's 1.5 times faster than it would be without the Choice Scarf, and you're able to switch out of there before a big ice type attack or another big attack comes onto it and potentially picks up the kill, leaving it in the back for you to bring something in and able to cycle that Intimidate later on in the game. So its utility is very good, and for those of you who played 2017 format, I would relay this kind of and relate it to how Tapu Koko was used with Volt Switch and getting that electric terrain up. Just this time, you're getting Intimidate, which is probably a bit more beneficial to supporting a lot of your partnering Pokemon, but in the same respect, it's used as a pivot to get the Intimidate off, get out of there, and then be a utility to bring back in again. And it works very well, especially with something like Heatran that's weak to ground type attacks. You can, pull your Landorus out, U-turn into something, bring Heatran in because it's unlikely that your opponent uses a ground type attack into that slot. You get your Heatran in safe. If a ground type attacker comes in like an opposing Landorus, you've got a nice easy switch in from your Heatran to your Landorus again, and you can start the process all over again and just keep cycling it round and round and round. Outside of that, it also has the utility to Earthquake. So Fast Earthquake is very strong. Fast Rock Slide, we all know what Fast Rock Slide is like. So Rock Slide has a 30% chance to flinch the opponent if it hits. It's 95% accurate, so most of the time it will hit. It is a double target attack as well, so you always have the chance to flinch your opponent and make them unable to move. And that's the big thing, you want your Rock Slides always going first. With the Choice Scarf Landorus, you're pretty much guaranteed that. So again, very strong. U-turn, I think, is a staple on this move, this choice of item on this Pokemon in general. And then that last slot, you can either have Superpower, which is really nice for hitting things like Mega Kangaskhan, Hydreigons, anything fighting weak. It's very good for utility, Cortanas, that we'll probably see popping up. And it's just a fallback option as well that you've got there. You can also have things like Knockoff, which isn't bad. Bulldoze, which we'll come to later. It has a lot of utility, you can put anything in that last slot if you want. But I'd say Superpower is probably the more staple, and it's another option to hit things like Heatran, especially if where you found in past formats like 2015, you'd be on the field and you'd maybe have your own Heatran out and your Landorus-Therian, and you'd be facing down against an opposing Heatran, and in that situation you can't Earthquake because you're going to knock out your own Heatran at the same process. So there's that kind of that mind game, whether they protect, you lock into Earthquake, and then then you're locked into Earthquake, and maybe they still have their Figy Berry activated, and maybe you're at a point where you can get taken down by one Heat Wave. So it gives you a nice option where you don't need to always Earthquake, and gives you a nice option against stuff that is fighting weak. This is just an example, of course, where you can just Superpower into it and not worry about hitting your partnering Pokemon and get an attack off and kind of seal up a game that way. So it will come down to how it caters for your team. And that last slot, it can be anything. But I think for EV spread, for a Scarf variant, I don't think you need to really worry too much about how you want to cater around the EVs. You want to be hitting as hard as possible. You want to be as fast as possible. I don't think going Jolly makes much sense with the Choice Scarf. I mean, you can do, but the power that you lose there is quite significant, so it's maybe always better going for an Adamant variant. You're already going to be faster than the majority of Pokemon anyway, so for that reason I would say that's the staple, and it's a good starting point if you want to start using Scarf Landorus. You can always tweak around with it as you go through your team, but we'll get on to that sort of thing later. And I will just say throughout this little competitive guide about Landorus-Therian form, the sample sets that I'm giving are just ideas around what you can use. Then they're just like starting points for you. It's all about how you kind of adapt Landorus to fit into your team, and there are other guides on YouTube about Landorus-Therian form, very good guides. I think Wolf did one, and the way he talks about Landorus-Therian form is super smart, and he talks about how when you use Landorus-Therian form, you need to cater it to your team, and that is such an important point. Like the sample sets that we've got here and wherever you find elsewhere are really good starting points. But the fact is, you need to cater Landorus to your team, because it will be performing specific roles to your team, and those specific roles might not be the same as what the set was originally designed to do. So you can tinker with it, take some attack out, take some speed out, put some defense EVs into, you know, calc against certain attacks. And that's one thing I will always fall back on. With tinkering and things like that, it will all make a lot more sense when you've played a little bit more with Landorus-Therian, and this goes for any Pokemon, with the Pokemon and with the team. And you know, you might come up against certain threats constantly that you think, man, if I could just survive this attack, then I could win this matchup 100% of the time. And that's when you need to start like taking a step back, think, right, what am I offensively hitting with this Pokemon, and can I write this all down, get this in my head, and see, can I reduce the attack stat a little bit, can I reduce the speed stat a little bit? And they're the margins that you need to be looking for when you're kind of tweaking your AV spread. And if you can do it enough without sacrificing some big KOs or outspeeding certain threats and things like that, then, and with that like little margins and sacrifices that you make to those stats, is that going to be enough then to survive that maybe one attack that you're really finding problematic? And they're the questions that you need to keep asking yourself and keep tweaking against, because sacrificing maybe some matchup that, you know, isn't relevant in the format makes so much sense. But it's all about testing, coming back to it, adjusting, and going on from there. So this is our starting point, Scarfed Landorus. I don't think it's something that we're going to see going away at all through the format. I think it will be very prevalent, and it's something as well when you're playing against it, you need to be aware that it might be a scarfed variant, so you need to set up well against it. We'll come to counters and how to tackle these sort of things later on in the episode. So the next Pokemon variant of Landorus-Therian form that I wanted to look at was the Groundium set. So Groundium Z was huge on Garchomp last season, and the Groundium Z gives you access to Tectonic Rage through the Earthquake, a single type ground type attack. So again, if you're in a situation where you've maybe got a partnering Pokemon like Heatran again out on the field beside your Landorus, and you need to hit that ground type attack this turn, you can always go to your Groundium Z. It's going to be hitting super hard, it's going to be KOing pretty much anything that doesn't resist it, and it's just a very strong attack. I've left the move option open here because I think Rock Slide's probably a good staple to have on it. Not massively necessary, you could probably get away without it, but the coverage between Earthquake and Rock Slide are very good. Like, it just makes sense. You've got your Earthquake ground type attack that hits all grounded Pokemon, and then for stuff that has Levitate, Flying, like Flying types in particular, they're weak against Rock type attacks, so the combination there kind of covers itself very, very good. Now in the third slot you could have something like U-Turn in there. Again, I think a very good staple, because again it gives you the option, and you're not scarfed, you can still utilize the U-Turn on slower threats to get out of there and reposition your board position a lot easier. So if I was to choose something there, I would always say, yeah, let's go for the U-Turn. It makes a lot more sense. It gives you that pivot option still, but you don't need to kind of tie yourself down to that. You can also go with things like Substitute, Knockoff, Bulldoze as an option, Rock Polish. It's got an absolutely flurry of variations that you can put into that slot, and kind of again going back to this catering to your team, it is something that you want to just cater to the rest of your squad, and will support it very well. Knockoff is something I love on Landorus-Therian form. I ran an Assault Vest Landorus in 2015 for the longest time, and I had Knockoff on there, and the utility of it was so good, but it was because it supported the rest of the team very well, and that's something you need to go back to. and maybe start out with U-turn. If you don't find you're liking it, or maybe you don't find you're using Rock Slide very much, then you can always switch to something like Knockoff. You could even go Sword Stance on there. And the one thing, we will pop over to our browser if we see. So we've got, there's a Scarf. And I mean, one thing I will just say about the Scarf, we've got the calculation, the damage calculator up here. And for those of you that don't know and are new to the VGC scene, I will link this damage calculator down in the description below. And it's such an important tool to use when you're building teams, when you're trying to cater and you know, make your own sets to be based around those teams. You can plug in attacks, you can plug in whatever Pokemon you want, combinations, -1s, anything, and see what the damage calculations are like, see what your survival abilities are like, and from there that's how you kind of go around building your team to do the jobs that you want. So it's kind of like a kind of text simulator almost, where you kind of input the data, you see what damage is like, and you can go on from there and then go into game, cater your EV spreads to suit you, or tinker with it and you know, go on from there. But that, I will just say that quickly. So we've got one thing I wanted to mention with the Scarfed Landorus-Therian form is, you know, if you can avoid being intimidated, you're going to outspeed something, a big threat like Tapu Koko, and you're going to be able to pick up one hit KO easily on it. So that's something that they need to be wary about, and you can play around that even with a competitive Pokemon or a Defiant user. Now competitive and Defiant, they activate an attack boost or a special attack boost if any stats get dropped. So if that Intimidate comes in on a competitive user like Milotic, then its special attack will go through the roof and it becomes very threatening very quickly. Same with something like Bishop or Braviary, where they've got the Defiant ability. If Landorus comes in on them, we've seen it many times before, they'll get an attack boost and then they become very threatening. So you kind of deters the Intimidate user and protects whatever's really threatened by it, something like Tapu Koko. But if they can't get an Intimidate off onto your Landorus, it's just nice knowing that the Earthquake will always pick up the kill on your run-of-the-mill Tapu Koko's 4 HP, 252 special attack, 252 speed. Now moving on to the Groundium Landorus-Therian form. So I've got this quick little calc in here, and it is just, I just tweaked the EV slightly because I was going through loads and loads and loads of calculations with it, and I thought there's not really much room that you've got to kind of take out of attack and take out of speed, especially if you want to keep that speed stat and you want to be hitting as hard as you can. There's not really much room to maneuver around without investing a lot to kind of cover some big threatening attacks. But one of them that I kind of came across was Scoffed Tyranitar will be a thing. It always has been a thing. But if you're going up against a Jolly Scoffed Tyranitar, you didn't need much tweaking here to survive a possible Ice Beam. -1, you're always going to survive the Ice Punch, so that's fine. But the Ice Beam could be an issue for you, and it's just nice knowing that you've got that calc in the bag and you're not really taking too much resource, you're not losing anything from speed, and what you are losing from attack you're not really losing overall because it's such a tiny minute difference. And that is just an example of what you can do just to cover those little things. So, but like I said before, the Groundium, if you can get it off full power, even -1, you're going to be doing so much damage. Like we all know, if you played, especially if you, I keep referring to it, and I apologize if you've never played VGC before, but if you played VGC 17, you'll know how hard Garchomp hit with that Tectonic Rage. And I mean, just to give you an example here, so we've got Landorus, which is way more powerful than your Garchomp. So we've got, yeah, the Groundium Z. It's still got a good chance to KO, you know, quite a bulky 252, 20 defense Tapu Fini, like a decent chance. And if you can just chip that a tiny bit, you're going to be picking up the KO on that like 100%. What else can I think of that's kind of neutral to it that will be used? I'm just trying to think. No. You get the idea though. It's going to be hitting pretty hard. Like, let's see, Garchomp, for example. we're not going to see many Garchomps, but the Earthquake here, Tectonic Rage, is going to be a clean one-hit KO on opposing Garchomps. But the thing you've got to remember is with Landorus-Therian form and using that Z move is that you will be coming across Intimidate users. So getting it off unintimidated is going to be pretty hard. And that's where you might want to cater the set or cater the move set to yourself. But the Groundium's very strong, and I think if you can like protect it with, I think if you're not going Scarf, I think you need a lot of speed control. Like Icy Wind support is something that I would really recommend. Bulldoze as well is something that you can use to support Landorus, because you're going to need to be able to start outspeeding some of the more common threats that are a lot faster in this format than they were in previous ones. Aurora Veil is another option that's going to be very nice. You know, that Aurora Veil from something like Alolan Ninetales or whatever else learns it will be very strong. It's supporting Landorus-Therian. Just to bolster those defenses a bit, so it's not as worried about big attacks coming onto it as it maybe was prior to that. So that is the Groundium set that I would suggest maybe starting with, and then again, once you've played around with it, if you find it's too frail, if it's not taking attacks well enough, and you think, I've got Icy Wind in here, there's some benchmarks that you can hit with stuff like Icy Wind. So one of the big ones is base 130, so Tapu Koko, Mega Gengar, Crobat, other Pokemon in that base 30 region, they will hit a speed stat of 200. So one of the things you want to keep in mind and make a note of for this format in particular, if you are using Icy Wind or any other speed reducing attack like Bulldoze, Electro Web or anything like that, the benchmark you want to hit to outspeed base 130s after a -1 is always going to be 135. So you can afford to reduce Landorus' speed down that way. So you can straight away take it down to 188 speed EVs on an Adamant Nature 135, and that's a bunch of EVs that you can put into the defenses like straight away. The next benchmark down from there, I would say probably the one that you want to hit is probably 120, and that guarantees that after an Icy Wind you're going to be outspeeding base 110s, so you can go right down to 68 EVs on an Adamant Nature. And that means you're going to be outspeeding 110s. So stuff like Mega Metagross, because after it Mega Evolves, I'm going to just turn the light on in here because it's got pretty dark pretty quickly. I don't know why. It's raining outside. Yeah, but like I was saying, so after an Icy Wind on Mega Metagross, it's lost its clear body ability, so you will be able to reduce those stats down. And after a -1 Icy Wind, Electro Web, Bulldoze, whatever, you will be outspeeding it with your Landorus-Therian form, which is pretty huge. So that's the next benchmark, and look at all of those EVs now that you've got here spare to put in investment. And then the same goes again if you're finding that, like what we're going up against here. Let's just put Mega Kangaskhan in here and see what the Tectonic Rage does against a Mega Kangaskhan, standard Mega Kangaskhan. Okay, 136. You're always going to get it, so you don't really want to go below that, because you could go down below that if you think you can get away with it, but if not, you kind of want to always be going to that benchmark. So that's one thing I would recommend. If you find yourself not needing to hit as hard, you're not struggling against some of the bigger threats that you would maybe use the Tectonic Rage for in the first place, a way to start looking at that is making a list maybe or mentally about what you're hitting constantly with that Tectonic Rage, and what and then readdress the damage calculator here and see, right, what do I need to actually pick up the KO here? And that might mean you can lose some more EVs from attack and bolster your defenses, but it depends on the build of the Landorus-Therian. Maybe you want it a bit faster, less attack. It's all a question, like I keep coming back to, catering for the team and how you want to run it, and it's all about that testing process. So we will move on, but these are just options. The next kind of level down is benchmark. I would say hit is going to be 114, and that allows you to outspeed, and you can drop one more there. So yeah, you can go 114 which frees up so many EVs. And you hit 114 with your Landorus-Therian form. If you're using again those speed reducing attacks, then that will allow you to outspeed all base max speed 100s. So it falls into categories like that, and it's important to know them. So you've got 114 speed stat for base 100s max speed, speed stat of 120, that's base 110s max speed, and then 135 is base 130s, which will be reduced down to 134 after a -1 speed attack. So yes, and sorry if this is making this complicated. I just feel like these are points to kind of consider, and these are good examples to use right now, because speed control is a big thing in Pokemon. It's always important. If your Pokemon is always hitting first, it's always important, because if you can hit first, you can avoid getting hit yourself, and you can pick up knockouts, and you can win games by doing that. You also reduce RNG, because if you're not taking as many attacks, the RNG onto yourself is going to be reduced completely as well. So that's something to think about. Hitting first is always the most important thing, going first. And speed control, to back that up, is super important. So you've got Trick Room, you've got Tailwind, you've got Icy Wind, you've got Electro Web, you've got Bulldoze, you've got Thunder Wave. You've got so many options for speed control, and it's about fitting them into your team, how they work. You've got manual weather and weather abusers and things like that. So there's a lot of ways to do that and support your team through those methods, but it's just important, if you are using them, to know the benchmarks, so you're not wasting EVs when you're coming to EV a Pokemon. Like, if you don't feel like you need to be outspeeding those base 130 Pokemon like Tapu Koko, like Mega Gengar and such, then you don't need to hit that benchmark. You can reduce down to that next benchmark to make sure that you're always outspeeding regular Gengars, Mega Metagross, Kartana, Alola Ninetales. And if you find yourself you don't need to be hitting or outspeeding those Pokemon after a -1, then you reduce down again, and you get the idea. Okay, so that's just kind of explaining that side of it. But we will move on, because we have another variant, another Z move, Landorus-Therian form, that has been getting a lot of hype recently, and I think it's going to be a very good variant, and it is that Flyinium Z Landorus-Therian form with Fly. So you can use that Supersonic Sky Strike, take advantage of its Flying Stab, if I can get my words out, and combination of Earthquake and Fly together are very good, cover each other very well. What you can't hit with Earthquake, you can hit for good damage with the Flying type attack, and you get Stab on both attacks, which is very good. So you get the same type attack bonus on both attacks, which is very good. And this is just a sample set that I've got together. I'll pull back over to Showdown just to quickly show you guys what I've got here. So there is the Groundium set, and this is the Flyinium set. So you can see this hopefully on your screen right now. I've got a bit of a weird EV spread on here, but one that I think makes sense for the job that you want it to do. I've went with Sword Stance as well as the third option, because I feel like you can go Jolly, and the EV number there for Jolly is you outspeed all base 95s max speed with a neutral nature. So stuff like Tapu Lele for one. Like modest max speed Tapu Lele, you will always outspeed, and because you've got Sword Stance, you can kind of afford not to go for so much attack. And the Intimidate cycling, if it is something your opponent's doing, it'll give you an opportunity to get a Sword Stance up possibly. And once you've got that Sword Stance up, then you can start launching those attacks off. And by reducing the attack stat, because you don't need as much initially, because you've got that option to boost yourself with Sword Stance, you can take some out of there, and then you can put it into the defenses. And one of the defensive calculations that I did pull up on this was, here we go, was Mega Manectric, Hidden Part Ice, and you can take that down to 6.3% chance to one hit KO. So that's a nice little calculation, right? And you can use that to maybe support your Landorus-Therian, especially if you're maybe getting it in and it's one-on-one situation right at the end of the match. Your Landorus versus their Manectric, and they're like, got this, but they haven't, because the likelihood that Hidden Part Ice is going to take you down, especially if you're full HP, is pretty minute, and you're going to pick up the KO on it if you've got if you're neutral, so you haven't been intimidated, because Mega Manectric has the ability to intimidate. I'm just putting it up to +1 on the screen here so you can see an Earthquake on this attack stat, on Jolly Nature as well, will make sure that you're always picking up the KR. And these aren't sets that I'm saying, this is the best set, you need to use this set, this is the only way forward. These are just sets that I've been playing around with when I've been putting this video together for you guys, if you want to take away, because I can see these kind of sets working quite well. And you can afford it in how it's going to operate. So if you're going up against an opposing Landorus-Therian form, so let's see. If you get a +1 off, if you get, see here, against the just a standard Adamant Landorus-Therian, say it's a Scarfed variant or a Groundium Z variant, if you're going up against it and you can get that sword stance off, or you got the sword stance off before it comes in, you're going to be on +1. And on +1, the Supersonic Sky Strike is always going to be a one-hit KO on the opposing Landorus-Therian form. So you can afford not to go Jolly. You can afford not to go Adamant, I should say. Afford to go Jolly. And if it hasn't got a Scarf, you're always going to be outspeeding the Adamant variant anyway. So it's quite nice. It's just an option to look at. But I did think that Mega Manectric Hidden Part Ice calculation was pretty nice. You also survive stuff like Modest, Tapu Lele, Psychic 100% of the time in a Psychic terrain. Oh, so much. So it's a starting point. Again, try it out. Put your own spread together. You could even just start out with 252 attack, 252 speed, 4 HP, and just go test with it, because there's nothing wrong with doing that, and then come back to it and tweak it. But that's the message I'm trying to get over to you guys. Doesn't matter really what set you're kind of starting off with, because it's something that you will have to tweak as you go through and once you learn a little bit more about how the Pokemon operates within your team. But that is a decent starting point, and I think it's something I'm probably going to try. So the Supersonic Sky Strike seems quite fun. Moving on swiftly, because I don't want to keep these too lengthy, but I just want to kind of cover some bases, some basic ideas, and how you can approach things. So the next variant that we've got, I'm going to bring up my showdown again, and we can go, is Assault Vest, like I mentioned earlier on in the recording. So Assault Vest Landorus-Therian is something that I can see being quite useful. It was very good, I feel, in 2015, and I'm not 100% convinced about how good it will be in this format, because I feel like there are a lot more threats to Landorus-Therian now than you had in those past formats, and I don't know whether or not it's going to be it's viable to use anymore. I think it's probably got a niche place in the format, and I could be completely wrong, but I just don't see it being as viable as it has been in the past. But it's definitely an option to consider. It gives you really good special defense. One of its biggest weaknesses is ice, so it means you can take attacks, ice type attacks, a lot easier. You don't need to worry about water type attacks, and just general special type attacks you're going to be able to handle a lot better. And it does give you access to 4 moves, so I've left the 4th move open again, because like I say, I do feel like Earthquake, Rock Slide and U-Turn are the staples on the set. Rock Slide, I guess, could be interchangeable, but I think for the majority you're going to want to keep those attacks on the set, because they are just so good. But at the same time, knowing that, it helps you know what to expect from your opponents as well. You know your opponents are probably going to have those attacks, so it helps you kind of set up against your opponents and play around Landorus. But that's something, again, we can come on to later. Again, that last slot could be something like Bulldoze for speed control if your team needs it. Could be Knockoff. Again, utility, very good, getting rid of opposing berries, opposing items that are being a bit problematic. Hits stuff like Cresselia for good damage as well. Or you could go for, I don't know, even like something like Hidden Part Ice, Sludge Bomb. You could even have a mix set there. But probably Superpower, Knockoff, Bulldoze, or probably a Stone Edge even, or probably your better options on Landorus-Therian. If you've got the Assault Vest, Fly even is an option on there, but again, it will be what will cater to your team. The move set is explained. The EV spread, basically I think it takes, like we can see here on the damage calculator, just get rid of Showdown, bring you over here. One of the big things I wanted to make sure, like, it's a big special attack, it's 4 times a week, it's probably one of the biggest attacks that you'll see coming on to Landorus-Therian form. You probably will come across other stronger Blizzard users, like a Bomber Snow or a Mega Bomber Snow. But one thing you can calc against with the Assault Vest, not sacrifice too much, because you've still got that max speed attack as well, so that's quite important. Because when you look at Pokemon like Heatran is base 81, I think. 81, could I be wrong? Let's find out. 77, I was wrong, but base 77. But I do know that it hits a speed stat of 141 when max speed timid, and you don't want to be taking hidden part ices. You don't want to make yourself slower than it, because it could have hidden part ice, it could have a Figy Berry, and that could be the end of your game. That could be the winner for your opponent in that situation. So it's always worth just looking at these things and making sure that you're outspeeding some of the slower Pokemon in the format, even if they go max speed, which is unlikely, but it's not out the realms of possibility. But with that max speed on Adamant, you're always going to be outrunning stuff with 177 max speed, and that kind of, you can just go off the base speeds and like work your way down the list and see what's slower than that, and you know you're outspeeding it just on a neutral territory, so there's no speed control in effect. So that kind of covers. As I say, I'm not massively confident about the Assault Vest. I guess this is a kind of a starting point where you could go with a spread. You're doing decent damage. The Earthquake's going to be doing decent damage. You don't need as much attack, but it kind of pays off. I feel like if you're going Assault Vest, you need to make using the Assault Vest worthwhile. There's no point of whacking an Assault Vest on, going 252 attack, 252 speed, and then realizing that, oh, I can't actually take an Ice Beam from a Suicune, I can't take an Ice Beam from a max attack Cresselia, I can't take a Blizzard from a Ninetales, I can't take an array of other special attacking options. The question then comes back, if you can't take them and you're not EVing to calc those, what's the point of having that item on that Pokemon? It could be better used on something else, or you could be utilizing another item on that Pokemon. And then the questions you need to ask yourself, is the item actually worth it? And if it's not, then just take it off and use something else. And there's no point of me putting a spread up here saying 4 HP, 252 attack, 252 speed, and saying, yeah, okay, whack an Assault Vest on it, it'll be able to take a Psychic from a Tapu Lele a lot easier. They're not generally the attacks that are going to be thrown out at it commonly. Your Ice Beams from Cresselia, your Icy Winds from Gengars, Mega Gengars, Hidden Part Ices and stuff like that from like Life Orb Nihilego, which this takes. They're the important attacks that you need to survive, and not being able to take them with the item just doesn't make much sense. So you lose a bit of attack from it, you keep your speed. I mean, one option here would be you take away a lot of the speed and then you put that into attack. It's kind of a 50-50. It again comes back to how that set would suit it, and you might not want to survive a Blizzard from an Alolan Ninetales. It might not be relevant to yourself. You might have way better options in your team to deal with it, so it's not something you need to consider. So in that case, you look at the next biggest threat of attack that you might want to survive. Say, just for instance, an Ice Beam from a max attack Cresselia with a Life Orb, just for instance sake. That's the next biggest threat attack that you want to take with Landorus. Calc for that and then work from there. That's all I'll say. But I'm not convinced about the Assault Vest. It's something I definitely will try, but I'm really not convinced about it from the calcs that I've done. I think there are better item choices. And this leads us on to our final option. I think will be a very good one, is the 50% berry. And I'll just scoot back over to Showdown again just to show you this, because I do like this set a lot, and it's something that I've just been playing around with, and I think it's pretty strong. So we've got 196 in HP, so that's reducing the HP number, so you take less recoil if you've got any, but not in this case. But from weather, so from hail, you take less damage. From leech seed, you'll take less damage. It just reduces that slightly. You've got only 12 attack EVs, but I think you can get away with it. It does work in this set. 100 defense EVs for a specific reason. 12 special defense EVs, they were left over, and then you've got a speed stat of 135. So this is built to work around an icy wind, bulldoze, electro webs, some sort of speed control. User like that also will work in tailwind as well, but it is meant to work around primarily an icy wind user. So you could have something like Tapu Fini sitting next to it with icy wind. And the other thing is, what I wanted to do on this set is have my own method of speed control as well. So I've got bulldoze and earthquake on there, and primarily for this reason. So I do think Mega Metagross is going to be a massive threat in this metagame. And like I say, one thing you have to remember, guys, these are just samples, these are just ideas of what my thoughts are on how it would run, and from playing past formats and what I think going in with new ideas. Because I haven't played too much, things can change very quickly, and that's why I keep coming back to the point. Take these examples on board, use them as examples, but then you're going to have to test and use things to kind of cater to your own team and your own tastes and how you want to set up and play your own game with it. So one of the big reasons why I put this EV spread together in particular is because Mega Metagross has access to Ice Punch. It's one of the biggest threats in the game. It can so basically, if you can get a -1 onto it with this EV spread, you're always taking an Ice Punch and a -1 from a Mega Metagross. Jolly 252 attack, invested Mega Metagross with that Tough Claws ability, so it's hitting pretty hard, so you're able to take that. That will then activate your Figy Berry, get you all that nice health back, and that turn, while you go for a bulldoze, you'll be able to reduce its stat down, you'll be outspeeding it the next turn, and then you can potentially pick up the KO with an earthquake. So I think the calculation on just a 4 HP Mega Metagross is, so you've got 58 as your minimum, 34 for your minimum on the bulldoze, equating to like 92%, right up to 112 with your max damages, you've got to remember, and that's about 60% chance to one-hit KO a Mega Metagross with the Super Berry, as long as you've got that -1 onto it. So it's quite good in that respect. It means as well that you can bulldoze against potential Tapu Koko. It's not going to be picking up the KO on you because you're going to take the hidden power ice from it. And you will be able to outspeed it the next turn with that speed stat as well. Same goes for stuff like Mega Gengar and things like that. So I think this could be quite a good utility. I would probably suggest for that third slot on this Landorus-Therian that you probably go U-turn. It makes a lot more sense because you want that utility. I'm just going to come over to Showdown again, and I did leave it vacant because I think you could put anything from Superpower in there, but U-turn's probably better, especially if you get, the more I think about it, especially if you get the bulldoze off and then you want to get out of there because your opponent has maneuver their board position and you're threatened the next turn, but you're faster this turn, so you can get out of there before you get that attack off. U-turn is going to be very good, and it still operates like you want Landorus to be operating. It's a lot bulkier. It's going to be able to take those attacks, and I think the 50% berry is going to get you a lot more. And again, I don't know if this is going to be the best spread, the best setup for it. It's all going to be down to how the format evolves and shapes up, because it might turn out where you don't necessarily need a super fast Landorus-Therian form. You might look at, it might work out like Arcanine did in the 2017 format, where it started quite fast and then just got slower, bulkier. And that's one thing you can look at. But again, it all comes down to how it fits into your team. And I know I'm like a broken record repeating that, but it's such an important point to kind of cover. But there's some sample sets for you guys. There's some of my initial thoughts on what I would look at when I'm putting EV spreads, movesets together. And hopefully there'll be some benefit to you. If you've got any questions about them, always ask as well, because I will get back to you. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on them and what you think would be a very good Landorus-Therian spread or set, or how it would perform in the metagame. The one big thing, the statement that we can make is that it is going to be a very prevalent Pokemon. It's going to be used. It's not going to be used. There's nothing going to come and take its place for how it performs. It is going to be on the majority of teams as the Intimidate user. So something you need to be aware of, something you need to learn to play against, and something if you want to use to be able to build around and use and utilize very well. And hopefully this guide is kind of providing a little base for you guys to be able to do that with. But going over to our final screen, we need to go over. Oh, we don't want to get rid of the overlay. We need to get rid of that and come to this little screen. So, how to counter Landorus-Therian form. So, you've got loads of options how to counter it. Some move choices you've got. Icy Wind is very good. You're going to reduce that speed stat on it, so you can make sure you could potentially even pick up a 2-hit KO on it. You've got Will-O-Wisp that's going to burn it. It's primarily going to be a physical type attacker. So if you can get a Will-O-Wisp onto it, burn it, reduce that attack damage. It's not going to be doing as much damage. It's not going to be as much of a threat as it was before that. So that's very good. Obviously, your water type attacks. Hydro Pump, Scald, going to be very strong against it. It's not going to enjoy taking those. And then the big attacks. Ice Beam, Blizzard, you've got Hidden Part Ice as well. Going to be very good options because it's 4 times weak, being a ground and flying type attack against it. Some other things you could think about is Trick Room. The Landorus-Therian form is not going to enjoy Trick Room at all. It doesn't like the Trick Room environment. You're either going to be playing against a Scarfed set that's going to be ridiculously fast, so Trick Room is not its forte, or you're going to be playing against one of the other variants that might be a bit slower, but still it's not slow enough to really benefit from Trick Room, so it's not going to enjoy it. So as long as you've got some like slowish or moderately slow Pokemon in your Trick Room setup, then you're going to be alright as long as you can hit it for decent damage and get rid of it before it can start attacking you. But that's one of the big things. Tailwind, again, a really good option. If you can get a Tailwind up, you don't even need to worry about the Scarf variants as long as your Tailwind users are outspeeding Landorus-Therian form, and that's something you can look at. So Landorus-Therian, let's just do it. So 1, 4, 3. We want to be doing that, so it would be 1, so 2, 1, 2, 1, 4. So it hits, I think, roughly working out right now, it's hitting about 214 speed stat with the Scarf on an Adamant Nature max speed. It could be wrong. You can double check that. But in a Tailwind, that means you need to be hitting like 108 and you're golden. 108 speed stat with whatever you've got in a Tailwind, it's going to be outspeeding Landorus-Therian form. So it's just an example. That's all you need to kind of look at. So Tailwind could be a very good option. Wide Guard is a very good option, especially if it's a Scarf user and you can protect that first turn. See what it locks into. If it locks into Rock Slide, if it locks into Rock Slide or Earthquake, you know you're safe to use the Wide Guard the next turn because it's locked into that. It's got no option. It's also good against the Z variants, especially if they've used that berry and they need to use Earthquake. You can again lock them out from using that with the threat of Wide Guard. So you've got some Pokemon choices as well. Rotom Wash is very good. It resists and is immune to the ground type attacks, as same as Cresselia, and can throw up big attacks against it. You know, Hydro Pump from the Rotom Wash, it's got access to Will-O-Wisp as well. You've got Cress with Icy Wind, Ice Beam. It's got very good options against Landorus-Therian form. It's bulky as well. It's so defensively built that it's going to be able to take a flurry of attacks from Landorus-Therian form, and one-on-one, I don't think you're going to be winning against the Cresselia a lot of the time. And then you've got something like Suicune, another bulky water Pokemon, very good, has access to Tailwind. Of course, Crest has access to Trick Room as well, so you can set that up if you want to. But Suicune has access to Tailwind. It's going to have access to Icy Wind, Ice Beam, Scald, Hydro Pump, whatever you want. You're going to be able to hit that Landorus-Therian form for good damage. And because of how bulky and defensively built Suicune is, you know, again, it's going to be the same case as Landorus isn't going to be able to get the damage onto it that it needs to in time for you to potentially beat it one-on-one or just deal with it in amongst the mist of the battle sort of thing. Another choice would be Tapu Bulu and its grassy terrain, obviously weakening those big ground type attacks, earthquakes, etc., and you're threatening it for decent damage with the grass type attacks. The one thing that you have to be aware of is, depending on how popular the Flyinium, the Supersonic Sky Strike variant of Landorus-Therian is, that will make how relevant Tapu Bulu is as a check to Landorus, because it will be threatened. But the thing is, you can always use Tapu Bulu to set the terrain, get it out of there before it gets threatened by anything, and then just use it as a support against those ground type attacks. So you could maybe build it around something like Tyranitar or Excadrill, so you can get that grassy terrain up, and then bring in your Tyranitar, bring in your Excadrill that are then covered against the ground type attacks coming out from the Landorus. And if it has got the Flyinium Z, then it's not going to be doing too much damage to those type of Pokemon. Rock and Steel resist those attacks, so it'll be fine. But that'll about cover everything, I think. As I say, I don't want to make these too long. It has been quite long already, but hopefully it's been digestible for you and it's been informative. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think of this little run through, and if there's anything that you think in here that needs improving, needs looking at, needs going over a bit more, maybe needs taking out, do let me know, because these are something that I want to be producing quite regular, and I want to be doing a lot of them, so I want to make sure that they're right and they're kind of relevant for you guys. So if there are problems with them, or if there's anything you think I need to include or maybe don't include so much of, let me know and we'll tweak them and we'll get them all polished up, ready going forward. And also, like I say, I will be doing lots of these, so if you've got a preference on what you would like to see next on the competitive guide, do let me know, guys, and I will make sure to cover that in our next episode, which will be out next week. And what I'm planning to do from next week onwards will be to drop about 2 a week of these, so we'll continually roll them out, and hopefully it gets you a bit more in tune with these new Pokemon, the format in general and stuff like that. And as we go on, I'm sure we're going to be learning a lot about the new format. So thank you as always for tuning in. I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate all and any feedback I do get from these videos or questions or anything like that. And I will make sure to answer anything that you guys do have in the comment section below. Everything will be linked in the description. If you need the sample sets and stuff, I'll make sure that they're available to you. And I will see you all for another competitive guide very soon. So until then, guys, you take care of yourselves and bye-bye!